What's up guys, Eagle here from ProNDC. Welcome to another ESO build video. Today I want to show you the Stamina Templar in PVE, the setup that I'm currently using, and that's really effective. I've talked with someone from my guild about the setup that he's planning to run on his Stamina Templar, and I had a really similar setup in mind. It's basically pretty easy to get because it's one crafted set and two farmable sets, because one is of course a monster set from a dungeon and the other one is a set that you can farm in trials, but you can farm it in normal mode, except like for the jewelry in gold you need to go to vet, and I recommend to get it in gold, but vet trials are not that hard because you can get it in Sanctum Fear, but I will get to that when I talk about gear. I'm gonna start, of course, with the stats first, because Stamina Templar is pretty nice. I have 64 points into Stamina. You can put like 2 or 3 points into health to hit that 17k mark, but our resistances are pretty high and we have some nice damage mitigation, so 16.8k is actually fine. I'm a red guard. The passives are really good. We get 10% more max stam, and we get 10% more stamina recovery, and also we get back stamina every 5 seconds when you do melee attacks, so that's pretty nice. I'm using a Thief on the Stone, and I'm using max health and max stamina food. Weapon crit unbuffed 66.3%, but that's because I have 6 medium, 1 heavy, and so I lose 2% crit, and also one piece is in well fitted and not in divine, so I lose some crit there as well. Should actually be like, I think, like 67% and 77% buffed. Yeah, 67.3, 76.3. Almost 38k stamina, which is pretty nice, and standard stamina recovery because we go all weapon damage. We're not using dubious Cameron Throne as food, we just use the regular buff food, and fully buffed our stats look like this. So this is without the weapon damage enchantment proc, so almost 4k, and with the weapon damage enchantment it's almost 4.5k, and it goes even higher in trials. With an infused weapon it would be even higher, and in trials it goes higher because of spell power cure. So you can hit almost 5k weapon damage on this setup, which is pretty nice. Because on the Templar we have a passive that's called Balanced Warrior, and it gives us 6% more weapon damage. So like stacking weapon damage synergizes pretty well with the class itself. But it also goes for Stamina Dragon Knight if you use because like tanks or yourself, you can use Earth and Heart abilities, for example Igneous Shield or Molten Armaments, and also Stamina Sorcerer gets also 2% more weapon damage for each class ability slotted, so that's pretty nice. Anyway, let's talk about gear first. So we have one craftable set, and that's Hunting's Rage. So as I said, I have 6 medium and 1 heavy on the legs here. Chest would be better, but the thing is that I only have the other set. I only have the chest in divines and the shoes in divines, so we have 5 pieces, 3 weapons and 3 body pieces, and we have 2 sharpened daggers. You could go 1 infused or precise. If you don't use 2 sharpened, I'd recommend infused. I have a poison and a weapon damage enchantment. However, I'm not sure if you use infused if you should go with weapon damage or with the poison damage enchantment, because the thing is that I've seen DPS tests where someone had an infused weapon and put the poison damage enchantment there, and my poison damage enchantment, let me check it, let me check it here. Like my weapon, like even on one of my better tests, my poison damage enchantment only did 600 DPS, and I've seen other tests where with an infused weapon the poison damage enchantment did more than 2.2k DPS. or more than 2k DPS. So it's more than 3 times as much DPS from that enchantment. I'm not sure if you're able to get, though, like a similar amount of DPS increase if you have an infused weapon with a weapon damage enchantment, or if it's even better. But I've heard from people that infused is really good, and I think also Allcast recommends it on one of his weapons. And the only thing that you need to change is CP a little bit, but I will get to that later. So what I'm using right now is 2 sharpened because it's like a little bit more secure for penetration and all that stuff. So that's pretty nice. And yeah, Hunting's Rage, a craftable set, gives us crit, about 6.4% stamina, and then also about 300 weapon damage. And that's pretty nice. Easy to get gear. We go all divines on the body, of course, if possible. The other set that's not craftable, you have to farm it and you have to get the jewelry in gold from Sanctum Ophidia, is the Twice-Fanged Serpent set, or Two-Fanged Snake. Like, the set items names are Two-Fanged Snake, but the set itself is called Twice-Fanged Serpent. You get weapon damage, stamina, and crit, basically like the whole stamina package when it comes to damage, and then you get 1000 penetration, stacking up to 5 times for 3 seconds. And it's really easy to have a good uptime. Like, I can show it to you here. Unfortunately, it's in German, but this is the Twice-Fanged Serpent bonus. You can see like 2 times stacking, 100% uptime, 3 times, 98% uptime, 4 times 98, and 5 times 97%. So we basically have 5k penetration up all the time. That's really, really good. We have weapon damage in all the jewelry pieces, and of course max stam on the body pieces, all divines. And yeah, it's a really good set. Get it in Sanctum Ophidia, go in there, do it in vet. If you can, do the hard mode. Like, Sanctum Ophidia hard mode is probably the easiest hard mode in a trial, and it's not that hard. You could also go with Vicious Ophidian to have a little bit more stamina sustain, because Vicious Ophidian gives you a little bit, like, gives you 8% cost reduction, which is nice. And if you choose jewelry and 2 body pieces, you'd have it on both bars. And also, every time you kill someone, you get 2150 stamina back, which is also really good. Now you get weapon crit, so you'd have a little bit more crit, but you'd have basically, I think, like the same amount of weapon damage. If I get it correctly, yeah, you have the same amount of weapon damage and a little bit more crit, and also minor slayer, so 5% more damage. But the 5% more damage doesn't compare to the 5k of penetration that you get from Twice-Fanged Snake or Twice-Fanged Serpent. So Vicious Ophidian is a little bit better for sustain. Twice-Fanged Serpent is better for DPS. And you can play this setup like Hunting's Rage and Twice-Fanged Serpent on basically all stamina classes. You can play it on the Stam Sword, you can play it on the Stam Decay, you can play it on the Stamina Nightblade, and I will play that on my other classes. Like, once I level them, I will play it like this, and then also I'm pretty sure on my Stam Warden I will play it like this in PVE, because it's easy to get, and I have all the gear here, and it's really strong. For the monster set, I chose Veldreth because it gives me weapon damage, which also, like I said, synergizes well with the Templar passives. And DPS wise, like for single target, it's not that far behind Croc. But here's the thing with Croc. Like, Croc will, let's have a look at the set bonus. So Croc will give you 1.8k physical penetration. I think it's like 1.9 something k. Let's say in gold it's 2k penetration. Maybe it even is, I'm not sure. Like, let's say it's 2k penetration. We have 5k from Twice-Fanged Serpent, and we have 100% uptime basically. We have sharpened weapons that at 5160 penetration. We have our tank that use puncture and that gives you 5,280 resistance reduction. So you reduce the resistances of the enemy by 5,280 from the tanks, and then you have about 10k of penetration yourself from your sets and your weapons and the traits. And then also the tanks have crusher enchantments on the weapons, which reduce the resistance for 5 seconds by 1.6k. Then also on the Templar, and you're about able to get a 70 to 80% uptime on Power of the Light, because it's an rotation and it reduces the resistances by 1,320 for 6 seconds. So that's also pretty nice. And bosses in dungeons and trials have 18,200 resistances. So that's the value that we use for calculations. And we're pretty much at 0 right now. So that's really strong. And that's also the reason why I'm using 2 daggers. Because the thing is, you could use an axe. Because of the twin blade and blunt passive, an axe will give you an 8% chance to do some bleeding damage, and it's really strong bleeding damage. However, compared to before, bleeding damage is not as good anymore because we have so much penetration. And the thing about bleeding damage is that it ignores resistances. So bleeding damage is the most effective when there's still resistances that can be ignored by it. So then bleeding damage becomes really strong. And also Rending Slash is what's stronger because it's also bleeding damage. However, the resistances are at 0, like almost 0. We still have some points in penetration, so they are at 0 for sure. And we'd lose 5% crit if we switch out a dagger for an axe. So that's the reason I went with 2 daggers. It's just the safer approach because like 8% chance is not that high, and I had like better results with 2 daggers. Even back then on like last patch when I still used maelstrom weapons on my stamina classes, I had better results with 2 daggers instead of an axe and a dagger. But you could use the axe, it's still good, it's still great for damage. Like if you already have a Hunting's Rage axe or dagger, you can just use that. Croc, however, like I said, will give you about 2k penetration, but there are no resistances that can be penetrated. So if you use Croc, don't go with 2 sharpened weapons. Like one weapon will give you 2.5k penetration. If you use Croc, go with an infused or precise weapon. That's what I'd recommend. Like go for infused. Infused will be the better option compared to precise, but that's the reason why I chose Velodreth. So Velodreth can be obtained in the Cradle of Shadows. It's a DLC dungeon, so if you don't have it, go with Croc, because Croc can be obtained in the Fungal Grotto 1 and the end boss on that. And that's about it for the setup. Like the only thing missing is of course the Maelstrom Bow, and it's sharpened. Sharpen is the best trait. Reason for that is pretty simple. In trash fights, not every mob can be resistance debuffed, and sharpened will like penetrate the remaining resistances of the enemies, because Endless Hail is an AoE ability, and while the boss has all the debuffs on him and all the armor debuffs, like adds, for example, the Panthers at the first boss on Vmol, they do not have like puncture, like the debuff, the resistance debuff on them, and thus sharpened is the best trait for Maelstrom Bow. However, if you don't have sharpened, you can still use precise or infused, or I think like basically any other trait. And the Maelstrom Bow is just so incredibly strong. Like I can show it to you now here. Like Endless Hail did by far the most DPS, like 17% on my total single target DPS here, and that is insanely strong. It's almost twice as much as from my Caltrops, and twice as much as my puncturing sweeps. No, not the puncturing sweeps. That's my biting jabs, and that will get more in AoE fights. Of course, more with trials buffs. I only had this was completely self buffed. So if I had a tank, I'd had more, like around like 39k DPS, which is really good for stamina setup. And then also I don't main Stamina Templar. I just recently got back into Stamina Templar, and it's really good. Trust me. And also the setup is pretty strong. So you need to get the Maelstrom bow. It's strong, really strong. And then basically any trade is good. And if you don't have the Maelstrom bow, go with the Master's bow. That would be the next best option, but it's not as strong as the Maelstrom bow. And if you don't have the Master's bow, then the next best option would be a Hunting's Rage bow and sharpened. And you would put a disease damage. No, wait. Yeah, poison. You would put a disease damage enchantment on the bow. You have poison here, weapon damage here, and then disease on the Hunting's Rage bow. But the Maelstrom bow, just go and get it. Like, I know it's hard to farm all these weapons from Maelstrom Arena. I don't have like the staves and sharpened myself, but I have the bow, and I had like about 180 runs like on both platforms, PS4 and PC, and the bow is just so valuable for stamina DPS. You need to get it. So that's it for gear, for the gear that I use. However, the best option, DPS, not the best option for group buffing and DPS at the same time would be War Machine. So War Machine, the set, you can see. Oh, I have bracers and divines. I thought I only had the chest and divines. Okay, I have two pieces, but I only have like shitty traits on my swords. I don't even have a dagger and an axe. Like, you can replace Hunting's Rage with War Machine. And what does the set do? You get max stamina, you get Minor Slayer 5% damage boost, which is nice. You get weapon damage, and when you use an ultimate ability, you and the two closest allies get Major Slayer, which is 15% more damage for 10 seconds. And that's pretty good and pretty strong on the Templar. And the reason for that is the extremely cheap ultimate Crescent Sweep. So Crescent Sweep only costs 72 ultimate. We can basically spam that ability. And we also have like passives like in the CP tree, Synergizer. When you activate a synergy ability, you generate 2 ultimate. So we get back ultimate pretty fast. We get back ultimate from Dawn's Wrath. No, where is it? Casting a Dawn's Wrath ability generates 3 ultimate. This effect can occur once every 6 seconds. And hey, what a coincidence. Our Power of the Light ability lasts 6 seconds. So every time we use that, we get back 3 ultimate. And then for synergies, we get back 2 ultimate. So that's pretty good. And then from our light attacks, of course, we get back ultimate. So we can spam Crescent Sweep quite a lot. We'd put it on the front bar if we had War Machine. But unfortunately, I don't have the set. But Hunting's Rage is just as strong. But I would be able to buff my allies with War Machine, so DPS wise, it would be a little bit stronger. Yeah, let's get into skills. So we have Biting Jabs, our main spell ability. It's an Edric Spear ability. We want that on our front bar because of Piercing Spear, 10% more crit damage. Pretty nice. Then we have Rending Slashes. Not as strong, of course, because it's bleeding damage, and only level 1 because I use the other morph in PvP all the time, and for some while in PvE. That's why it's just level 1. If I had my abilities max out at level 4, I'd have, like, I could do some more DPS, but whatever. Then we have Deadly Cloak. This is crucial. We need that. This is 25% damage reduction. Really strong, and we need to keep 100% uptime on that skill in trials. We just have to, because this is important for survivability. Like, get that skill on your bar and make sure it's active all the time. Rearming Trap. The duration is pretty similar to Deadly Cloak because you place it down and it activates after 1.5 seconds, then runs for 6 seconds, where we get minor force for 10% more crit damage. Then after that, it will reactivate after 1.5 seconds, and then run again for 6 seconds. So it's 3 seconds for reactivating or activating, and 12 seconds for duration of the damage over time effect. So 15 seconds in total, and that's pretty good because we can recast those two abilities like basically together. Then you have Power of the Light. Need to have an almost 100% uptime on that skill. I know it's not possible, so what you want to do is like every time it runs out, recast it. Really important. Basically, like when you're alone, when you're the only one using that skill, the uptime of the boss is between 70 to 80%. If you don't like die all the time, if you can just do your rotations, 70 to 80% should be the uptime on the boss. Then we have Flawless Dawnbreaker. So this ability is at level 1 because I also use the other Morrowind PvP, of course. And the passives from the Fighter's Guild give you 3% more weapon damage for each Fighter's Guild ability slotted. So if this was on level 4, I'd have 5% more damage. You see, like while slotted, your weapon damage is increased by 2%. So it's 3% on level 2, 4% on level 4, and 5 on level 4. No, 4% on level 3 and 5% on level 4, sorry. So like a total of 8%, so we're still missing out on 3% weapon damage that we could benefit from. But it's still pretty nice to have it slotted on the front bar, even if it's not leveled. For the back bar, Endless Hail, of course, really strong. It's for our Maelstrom Bow. Poison Injection. We still keep it up at the during the whole fight, and it gets really strong once the enemy drops below 50% health. Like what's the maximum tick that I got on Poison Injection? Like 13k tick. So pretty nice. Like I had a low amount of crits here. Should be a little bit higher. I don't know why it's that low, but yeah, usually in my other tests I had like 70 to 80% here. And that's like a really important skill, so DPS on that skill was unusually low. Anyway, so we have Restoring Focus here. You can put, like in dungeons, put Resolving Vigor here, but in trials get Restoring Focus. Restoring Focus is 8% damage mitigation. You want that. Minor Protection is just really, really good. And if you cannot get it from any other source, like I'm not sure if the Warden passives can give minor protection to others, or like in fights where you don't have the circle of protection from the tanks, this skill is really, really important. In fights where there is a circle of protection, or where you can stand like close to a tank, you don't need that ability. You can just go with Resolving Vigor to heal yourself and allies a little bit. Then we have Repentance. So Repentance got changed with this patch. It only restores stamina to the one that casts this ability, but it also restores health to everyone else. So basically, like in trash fights, what we do, like we kill stuff when we use Repentance to get back free resources, free heals, and all that stuff. So it's really nice. And also we get 10% more recovery on the back bar, which is really great. Razor Caltrops, not leveled of course, because I used the other morph in Maelstrom Arena. Razor Caltrops is a little bit stronger DPS wise. Like usually our dots don't run out, so we overcast the Caltrops. But when we put them down, there's an initial damage tick. And that will give us a little bit more DPS. But you can also use the other morph, of course. Then we have Crescent Sweep here, the cheap ultimate. DPS is okay, could be higher. It's like around like 1.1k, 1.2k DPS. Like, let me look it up. So like here, oh, it's 1.6k actually. Like yeah, okay. The DPS is higher, like on that fight, because I had 100% crits on the initial hit and then 7 out of 9 dot ticks were crit. So I have almost 1.7k DPS here. I have 1.7k DPS. Shouldn't actually be that high. I do have another test. Like this one. Pretty much the same. No, that's. Oh, I had the same results there. Didn't I? Basically, yeah. Pretty much like the same results. So it's a little bit low here. A lot of crits, of course. But on other fights that I had, like this ability only did like 1.3k DPS. If you don't want to run Crescent Sweep, there's another option. Like you can put Flawless Dawnbreaker on the back bar. You'd lose out on the 8% weapon damage. What you could do is run Lacerate or the morph of it. The morph would be Rent. It's the 16-second duration morph. And this will give you a little bit more DPS, like around 2.4k, 2.2 to 2.4k. And also it heals you. So for survivability and some extra healing, this could be the better option on the Templar. But I'm doing pretty fine with these ultimates, so it's up to you what you want to run. Anyway, that's about it for the skills. Let's have a look at champion points. I will start with the green tree because it's pretty simple. I have 20 into Warlord because break free, cost reduction, good for resource management. Then we have 75 into Tenacity, 75 into Mooncarve, 14%. Like putting more into either one will just be 1% more. Like you could put 100 here and take out points from Mooncarve. It's up to you, but I think this split is pretty nice because we can put 20 points into Tumbling and 20 points into Shadow Ward. And the thing about the new update is that for champion points, we want to get even numbers as much as possible because they have like rounding errors and they round downwards, so we get only 9% reduced block cost and 9% roll dodge cost reduction. Same goes for the red tree. That's why I have 2 points in spell shield here, because these are like leftover points. You can just put them wherever you want. I have 51 points into Ironclad, 49 into Hardy, 49 Elemental Defender, 40 into Thick Skinned, and 19 into Quick Recovery. And pretty much like on all classes, it doesn't matter which class it is. If it's Magic or Stamina, I'd have a pretty similar CPU distribution. I don't switch it around anymore for trials because there's no point. Putting 51 points more into Hardy or Elemental Defender will give you 4% more damage mitigation, and that's like basically nothing. That's not worth it to put so many points more into one tree. It's not worth it, trust me. But now to the interesting part, the blue tree. So for 2 sharpened weapons, this is the CP distribution that I recommend, and I had the best results with that. So we have 64 points into Mighty, 61 Thaumaturge, 44 Precise Strikes, and 12 into Piercing, 20 into Mastered Arms, 9 into Physical Weapon Expert. And if you don't have 2 sharpened weapons, you put 56 into Mighty and 56 into Thaumaturge. Like you drop the damage over time, damage boost from Thaumaturge, and the physical poison disease damage boost from Mighty by 1% each, and you'd put all the points into Piercing, so you'd have 2.3k more physical penetration. And that's the CPU distribution I would recommend if you use an infused weapon or a precise weapon. Play it like this. It will be the best way. But I have 2 sharpened, so I need all those points into Piercing. 12 points is enough. And basically that's about it. For damage rotation, so what I do before I start of the fight is I put my Deadly Cloak up. I try to keep it up all the time. And then I bar swap, do a heavy attack into Antler Sail, and then light attack poison injection, light attack caltrops, and then light attack ultimate. Light attack power of the light attack rending slashes, light attack trap, and then I start to use my jabs until my power of the light runs out. But as you can see now, I'm pretty low on stamina already, because I just keep light attacking and casting abilities all the time. So what do you do to get back stamina? This is pretty simple. You do a heavy attack. And as you can see, the animations for my heavy attacks are pretty short. Like if I just charge a heavy attack, it will look like this. So the animation doesn't take really long, but it could even be shortened. So what you want to do while charging the heavy attack is like you press down your button for your light attack or for your heavy attack, and while the character is charging the heavy attack, you press the button of the ability that you want to use next. So for example, if I want to use rending slashes and use a heavy attack into rending slashes, I just do my heavy attack, and while activating it, I press the ability, so it looks like this. And at the soonest moment, the game will automatically cancel the animation of the heavy attack. But you will still do the same amount of damage and get back resources, but it will use the ability instead. So like it's way faster than doing this and rending slashes to do this. It takes some time to get used to it. Of course, you need to keep track of all the debuffs. Like if you're on console, like you can track your rending slashes bleed. Like it will be a debuff shown on the enemy. I'm not sure if you can track power of the light, but you can also track poison injection to make sure that you have your rotation down all the time. And as I said, you can cast your Deadly Coke and Remark Track basically together. And when your power of the light runs out, like you have this big green thing on top of the enemy, and if it just goes away, you just recast it. And also make sure you do light attacks on the back bar all the time, because of the bow passive, of the Hawkeye passive. Dealing damage with light or heavy attack increases the damage of your bow abilities by 5% for 5 seconds, stacking up to 5 times. So, buffs. So we have Hawkeye here. It stacks up to 5 times. So you can see like I have 50% on the regular passive, 43 here, and 35% on 3 times stacking. Because I do up to 3 light attacks on the back bar. Let's see. That was that test. What's on that fight? So I have basically the same uptimes on those fights. But basically, like that's how it works. So I keep my Deadly Cloak up, heavy attack, Antler Sail, light attack poison injection, light attack caltrops, light attack ultimate. And then I put down my stuff. Make sure to reapply the dots whenever they run out. And my stamina is low, so I do a heavy attack into biting jabs. And when enemy dies, just repent to get back resources. And that's basically how it works. I will put the DPS test video of my 35 point something K DPS in here now, so you can see it in action. And I think then we're pretty much at the end of the video. I will show you the test first, and then I will hear you in a couple seconds. So guys, that was the DPS test. I hope you liked it. As you can see, it's completely self-buffed. If I had a tank with like major fracture, then I'd have like 39k DPS, maybe even a little bit more. Because like if I do more DPS on the target skeleton, of course it dies faster, and like the sooner I get to the end of the fight, the less heavy attacks I need to do to sustain during the fight, and I can do more light attacks and more biting jabs, and then I'd get a little bit more DPS. But like around 39k DPS possible with the setup, with the rotation that I play, should even be a little bit higher. I like with all the with off balance and a tank. What a lot of Magicka setups have, like you can go like for 45k plus. I've heard from someone like doing 46k, so that's pretty good, pretty nice. Stamina in general really strong this patch, and because of the buffs to Deadly Cloak, you can really play stamina in trials now. It's viable, and I hope you will have fun with the setup. So if you like it, just hit that like button, and if you don't want to miss any more ESO content, just hit that sub button. I'd really appreciate it, and I hope you tune in the next time. I will present you some build videos. So until then, bye bye.